When he discovers that he possesses supernatural powers, a 12-year-old teenager believes he is the new Messiah and must use this gift to decide the fate of the residents of his town. Today we're going to recap the first season of the series, The Chosen One, from 2023. After risking her life in a duel against a powerful invader who is after her newborn son, Marie takes the baby and flees the city. On the way, she is approached by a policeman who wants to take her in as a possible suspect in a crime. However, as he looks at the child, something mysterious happens in the officer's mind and he gives up arresting Marie, allowing her to make her way to Mexico. After leaving the United States, the woman burns her passport and decides to start a new life with Jody. From that day on, she calls herself Sarah and takes on a new identity. 12 years later, the boy meets up with his friends to let off some firecrackers during a party in the city and the group has to hide to avoid being hit. After the explosion, Wagner tries to run away and ends up bumping into a bunch of bullies. Seeing the boy in danger, his classmates go to his aid, but Jody is terrified and can do nothing but watch the whole mess. Only when they hear the police approaching does Angelo's gang decide to leave. At that moment, Tuca approaches the four friends and reveals that he's worried about his uncle because he didn't go to work that night. Suddenly, the man appears wounded and ends up fainting right in front of the children. Then, the next morning, Tuca tells them what his uncle said when he woke up. According to Temastian, he was attacked by a chupia, a kind of sea monster disguised as a woman who tried to steal his soul. Immediately, the fisherman attacked her and managed to pull out a tuft of the creature's hair. As he looked at the lock, Jody began to hear voices and had to take his medicine in an attempt to stop hearing the noises. After class, Hippolytus invites his friends to accompany him on a search for the mermaid who attacked Tuca's uncle. So they arrange to meet the next day before sunrise and walk to the beach where Temastian used to fish. After a long journey, the group arrives at a cemetery and has to walk a few more kilometers to cross the salt desert. Before continuing their journey, they decide to spend the night in an abandoned hut they find along the way. After a few hours of rest, the five friends continue on their way until they realize that they are completely lost. The young people are without food and water and yet they decide to continue walking, even though they know they run the risk of not making it back. While his friends bicker amongst themselves trying to find someone to blame for getting them lost, Jody kneels in the desert and uses his amulet to make an offering. Just then, a seagull appears and the boy feels he must follow it. In doing so, they finally find the beach and are thrilled to reach their destination alive. Once there, the children find Tuca's uncle's boat, where the man was storing some supplies. After drinking some water, they get on the boat and start their journey in search of the mermaid, whom Tuca knows as Chupia. Immediately, the group heads to the island where Temastian supposedly found the sea monster and ties the boat to a rock. However, due to the movements of the tide, the boat hits the rocks and begins to sink. When the youngsters realize what has happened, it's already too late and, to make matters worse, they can't find the sea monster they were looking for. Frustrated, the five friends return to the beach and walk back home. As they approach a bridge, the group witness an accident and despair at the sight of a truck falling on top of Jody. For anyone, this would be a fatal accident, but the boy managed to survive without any injuries. When he wakes up, Jody realizes he's in a hospital and his mother soon shows up to take him home, as the doctors say he's in perfect health. On the other hand, Carlos, the driver, who is Angelo's father, remains in a coma and is not expected to improve. That same day, Magda and Jody's other friends go to his house to visit him and are relieved to hear that the boy is all right. The next morning, the kids go to school and Jody becomes famous among the students, who try to find out how he was so lucky to escape the accident unscathed. So the boy explains how it all happened only to his classmates who are willing to pay to hear his story. Excited about the possibility of using the accident to make money, Jody decides to set up a stall with the help of Wagner and Hippolytus, where he starts selling some old objects that, according to him, will bring the users a lot of luck. Now that her son's accident has become famous and even appeared in the newspaper, Sarah prepares an emergency backpack with basic items in case they need to flee in a hurry. That night, the woman goes to talk to Jody and warns the boy to pay attention if he sees or hears anything suspicious. Sarah reveals that Jody's father perished when he was still a baby and since then, his paternal family has been trying to steal custody of him. Because of this, they have spent most of their lives on the run and must remain vigilant, because the people who want to find the boy will never give up looking for him. To prove to everyone that Jody really does have the ability to perform miracles, his friends decide to put on a show and charge for tickets. Eric, Wagner's younger brother, has had serious sight problems since he was a child and Jody pretends to cure him in front of everyone, but no one suspects that it was all an act. Since Jody's case appeared in the newspaper, Sarah has become even more alert and has become suspicious of any strange noises. So she starts practicing some escape strategies with her son and wakes him up in the middle of the night to find possible ways of escaping if someone tries to chase them. However, after a while of giving in to his mother's strategies, Jody says he can't put up with it any longer and constantly wonders why his mother has a stash of money and false identities. All the boy wants is to live the life of a normal teenager, but his friends insist that he continues performing shows, where he performs miracles similar to those of Jesus Christ. This time, Jody is on a mission to turn water into wine and, after studying some optical illusion tricks, he turns a bottle of water into wine in front of a large audience. Suspecting that this is just a cheap trick, one of the men offers to try the liquid and Elvis tries to stop him getting close to the children. Just then, a huge commotion breaks out and Jody is completely stunned. Seeing Elvis being hurt, the boy orders everyone to stop fighting and his shout causes an earthquake in the place. Terrified, the crowd flees and some students steal a few bottles of water before leaving. That night, Jody goes to his mother's hiding place to investigate the documents she keeps in the cave and realizes that, inside a crack in the wall, there are some drawings he has never seen before. Suddenly, he sees the shadow of someone approaching and quickly runs away. When he gets home, the boy accidentally manifests his power and the water from all the bottles that were present on the day of the show actually turns into wine. From a very young age, Jody has been able to manifest his powers, which has always worried Sarah. As he had no control over what he was doing, the child caused traumatic episodes for his mother and all she could do was try to calm him down. That's when Jody started taking pills to calm his mind and help him keep his powers under control. The next day, when he meets his friends on the way to school, Jody finds out what happened and Tuka begins to suspect that the boy really does have the ability to work miracles. When he arrives at the school, the principal finds some students drinking wine and they say that Jody gave them the bottles. As a result, the boy is suspended for a week. As his mother is at work, Elvis picks him up from school and asks the boy to explain what happened, but Jody can't say what's wrong with him. After leaving work, Sarah finds out that Jody has been suspended and goes to Elvis's bakery to find her son. As soon as they get home, the woman decides to tell him the truth and says that when Jody was little, he began to develop some supernatural gifts. When the boy lost control of his emotions, his powers manifested and drew people's attention. At this point, Jody discovers that the medication he thought was to prevent seizures is actually to keep him calm and prevent him from losing control. Upon hearing this, the boy runs to his room and discards all the pills. From now on, he decides not to take them anymore. In the afternoon, the group of friends gathers at Wagner's house and Eric ends up tripping on the kitchen carpet. In an attempt to help the boy, Jody approaches him and removes the glasses from his face. Eric is then able to see perfectly and discovers that his sight problem has been cured. After getting up, the boy tells him that he no longer needs his glasses to see and everyone is impressed by this further proof of Jody's powers. All Wagner and Hippolytus can think about is the money they can get from the boy's gift, so Jody leaves in a rage, realizing that his friends aren't worried about what might be happening to him. Not knowing what to do, the boy goes to a priest for help and tells him all the strange things that have been happening to him over the last few days. Then the man advises Jody to stop what he's doing, because invoking miracles is something very serious and dangerous. Jody knows that, of all his friends, Magda is the only one who really cares about him, so he invites her to watch the sunset. They've been in love with each other since they were very young and it's only now that the girl has the courage to give her friend his first kiss. After talking for a few hours, they walk back home and suddenly Jody is attacked by Angelo, who blames him for his father being in a coma. The man then forces the boy into a truck and drives off to the hospital. Desperate, Magda goes to Sarah for help and they both go after them. When he arrives in his father's room, Angelo orders Jody to use his powers to heal him. However, when he tries to help Carlos, the boy is transported into a frightening cave and refuses to continue using his powers. Furious, Angelo attacks him and lands a few blows on Jody. Luckily, Sarah arrives just in time and manages to immobilize the man. Mother and son then go home and Jody returns to the cave that night. When he gets there, he notices that the crack is bigger than last time and crosses the passage. At this point, Jody gets a closer look at all the drawings and hears a voice asking him to come closer. Meanwhile, Sarah is at home and finds a notebook of drawings that belongs to her son. Hours later, during a church meeting, the pastor is giving his speech when Carlos walks through the door and Angelo runs to hug him. When they see him, the faithful can hardly believe that he is alive and raise their hands to the heavens to thank God for this miracle. 13 years ago, Sarah was in need of money, so she decided to take out a contract to act as a surrogate. After signing the papers, she asked the nurse when the procedure would take place, but the woman said it wouldn't be necessary. Not quite understanding what she meant, Sarah returned home and a few days later was visited by a macabre angel while she slept. When she woke up, she had a faint memory of her dream and realized that there was something wrong with her body. So the woman decided to take some pregnancy tests and they all came back positive. After his last visit to the cave, Jody returns home even more inspired than usual and decides to write down all his memories in his sketchbook. However, the next morning, his mother reveals that she knows the boy left home the night before and decides to tell him the whole truth, because she is convinced that he won't rest until he gets answers to his questions. The woman then claims that when she got pregnant, she wasn't in a relationship with anyone, so Jody's birth was a miracle. When he discovers that he doesn't have a father, the boy is terrified and doesn't know if he can believe what his mother is saying. Suddenly, a group of religious people approach the house and Father Cruz tells them that they have come to see Jody because the boy saved Carlos' life. Furious at all the exposure, Sarah orders everyone to leave and starts packing her bags to leave Santa Rosalia. However, Jody says he won't go with her because he no longer believes his mother's words. Ever since he was little, the woman has said that they were running away from the boy's father's family and now he finds out that he has no father at all. Instead of helping her son find answers, Sarah left him even more confused and made Jody feel cheated. In order not to be forced to leave, the boy decides to run away and uses his bicycle to get around the city. On the way, he is approached by locals who ask the boy to perform miracles and heal their sick relatives. Among these people is a deaf man who asks to be cured and kneels in front of the boy. Compassionate for the stranger's pain, Jody decides to help him and, in fact, manages to get his hearing back. At that moment, all the people gather around the boy to hug him. Then Magda realizes what is happening and manages to escape with her friend. Together, they go to school and discover that the principal's mother is very ill. So the trio decide to go to Hernandez's house and Jody offers to help. But instead of curing the old woman's illness, all he can do is take away her fear of perishing and allow her to go to the next world in peace. The next morning, Lemuel goes to interview the patients who were saved by the miraculous boy and discovers that Carlos, although alive, is not at all well. Meanwhile, the town's religious gather by a lake to pay their respects to Jody and share their testimonies. Believing Jody to be the new savior of mankind, Pastor Cruz says he plans to build a temple for him and says he will follow him closely. During the night, when all the faithful have returned to their homes, Lemuel finally gets a chance to talk to Jody and introduces himself as a specialist in cases like his. The man then decides to do an experiment with the boy, in which he points out the ancient object that belonged to one of Jesus' followers and confirms that Jody really does have a supernatural gift. After returning to his car, Lemuel makes a phone call and says that he has found the boy they were looking for. However, before he can proceed with his plan, he needs to find more conclusive proof that Jody is the right person. Hours later, Tuca invites his friend for a boat trip and Jody falls into the water. At that moment, hundreds of fish gather around him and the boy takes some of them to feed his friends and the people gathered around his camp. As promised, a few weeks later Pastor Cruz starts work on the new temple. When she realizes that the story that Jody is the new Messiah is going too far, Sarah tries to spare her son from all that exposure, but Jody asks her to back off and shows that he is satisfied with the direction his life is taking. As the days go by, religious fanatics begin to worship Jody and baptize people in his name. Later, the boy receives a visit from Magda and her friend asks him to touch a shirt that belonged to Santos, her brother who has been missing for a few months. She hopes that Jody can locate him through the cloth, but the boy can't get any information. After dinner, Angelo puts his younger sister to bed and is disappointed to realize that his father is still apathetic, as if he were a zombie. Since waking up from his coma, Carlos has never been the same man and that night he decides to take his own life. After a baseball game, Jody goes to celebrate his victory and is being watched by Lemuel. While watching the boy, he is caught in the act by Sarah and states that his goal is to protect Jody from what is to come. As the new Messiah's 13th birthday is approaching, the young people of the town decide to get together to throw a party for him and Jody invites Magda to be his date. However, when the girl arrives at the party, she discovers that he is in a relationship with Rosa and leaves in frustration. When he realizes the harm he has caused his best friend, Jody realizes what a mistake he has made and returns to his camp. When he arrives at the tent, he finds his followers and Angelo, who has gone there to eliminate him. The delinquent blames Jody for everything bad that happened to his father and points a gun at him. However, before Angelo could fire, one of the faithful tried to knock the gun out of his hand and the shot ended up hitting Tuca. Immediately, the boy perishes and Jody is unable to use his powers to save him. At that moment, Sarah appears to console her son and, the next day, the victim's wake takes place. That afternoon, his friends gather to say goodbye to the boy and Jody feels guilty about what happened. When he realizes all the harm he has caused, the boy decides to follow his mother's plan and leave Santa Rosalia. Realizing that the whole town is trying to talk to Jody, the pair decide to take shelter in the church with the priest. However, when the day dawns and Sarah goes to call her son to leave town, she realizes that Jody has disappeared once again and goes to look for him. At that moment, the boy is on the site where a church was being built in his name and has just set fire to the whole camp. He then returns to the salt flats and walks through the desert until he loses his sanity. Under the blazing sun, Jody begins to have visions of his friends, and all the guilt he feels comes back to haunt him. After a long walk, he finds his necklace buried in the sand, exactly where he left it the last time he went on that walk with his friends. When he reaches the ocean, the boy attracts some whales approaching his boat and decides to jump into the sea. Immediately, his body begins to sink, but when he wakes up, Jody is inside the cave. He doesn't remember how he got there, but he hears a female voice giving him a message from Lemuel. Suddenly, Sarah enters the cave and interrupts the conversation. Together, they go to Tuca's funeral and have no idea that a group of religious fanatics have gone to the prison to settle the score with Angelo. The boy is taken to the church and has his wrists tied while Father Cruz whips him. At the end of the punishment, instead of releasing the boy, the crowd gathers to tie his neck and plan to take his life. However, before Angelo could be eliminated, Elvis and his friends showed up to save him and ordered them to free the boy. After Tuca's mother says a prayer for the boy, Jody approaches him and, with the help of his amulet, manages to absorb all the pain of those people. At that moment, he appears in front of all his friends at once and says that he went there to say goodbye. After remembering the good times he had with each of them, Jody frees Angelo and channels all his power into bringing Tuca back to life. The next morning, when he arrives in Santa Rosalia, Lemuel finds hundreds of bodies scattered around the city and wonders what all the chaos is about. The only person alive is Tuca, the only one who should really be eliminated. Suddenly, it starts to rain and all the bodies stand up again, as if they had never perished. Upon awakening, the villagers realize that they are free of all pain and resentment, and Tuca's friends and family are relieved when they discover that he is well. While everyone hugs and celebrates, Lemuel goes after Jody, because he senses that something terrible is about to happen. He quickly runs to the church, but when he gets there, he realizes that Sarah and the boy have run away. The woman then takes her son to the beach and, after saying goodbye, Jody gets into a limousine, where he finally meets the woman whose voice he has always heard inside his head. Immediately, the boy asks who she is and discovers that the creature capable of assuming countless forms is a member of a satanic community that has been working for years on a plan to defeat the Messiah during his second coming to Earth. At that moment, she says that she will take Jody to his father, and the boy is surprised to discover that he is Lucifer's son, as everyone always said that he was the savior sent by God. The woman then promises that he will become the most powerful man who has ever lived on Earth. But before that, he must return home and begin his training. According to her, that amulet that Jody has always carried was made by her father on the day the boy was born, and 20 years after discovering the truth about his origin, he becomes the President of the United States. On the other hand, Lemuel was sent by angels of light to keep a close eye on Lucifer's son and ensure that he never met his father. However, the man failed in his mission, and, now that the Antichrist is 33 years old, all countries are about to face the biggest war the world has ever known. So what did you think of this series? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.